All right, I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar on job hazard analysis, or job safety analysis as it may be called. We're going to go over all the fun topics under this main topic, and this is kind of a next level type of safety topic that has been proven to reduce injuries, accidents, facilitate training, and all that kind of stuff. So we'll go through all that today. My name is John Zeman with Timber Products Manufacturing Association, and let's get started. Okay, some of you may be familiar with this topic, some may not, but what is a job hazard analysis? It's a systematic way to evaluate hazards and then also find controls for them. Another name for it is a job safety analysis. You know, the H and the S they're pretty synonymous to go back and forth with. So why do we care? Why do we want to conduct a job hazard analysis? Well, job hazard analysis can prevent work-related death, injuries, or illnesses by eliminating and controlling identified hazards. And this means to ensure that workers have the training, equipment, and supplies to do their job safely. It will also help you in developing your accident prevention program. Um, you need to know what the hazards are in your workplace so that you can protect your workers from them. So that's where this all starts, is the whole hazard analysis. But the hazard identification is always step one. So leading into that, you need to have hazard awareness. You need to know what hazards are in your facility so that you can control them. Accepting a risk or a hazard is not the same as eliminating or controlling it. Now, when conducting a hazard analysis, you may need to take a fresh look at the way things are done at your workplace. Especially if we've been at a workplace for a long time, you sometimes become blind to hazards because you're just around them all the time, you don't see them. So doing a job hazard analysis or job safety analysis allows you an opportunity to step back from the processes that are being done, the different jobs, and really look at not only safety, but also production. Because as things change, as we put in new equipment, things change. So the old way might not be the most efficient way anymore. And sometimes going through this process will give you better ways to do things that are more efficient and safer. So, I mean, you always hear, we've been doing it this way for 20 years and we never had injuries or accidents. That just doesn't mean a hazard doesn't exist, though. It's just someone hasn't gotten caught by it. So you should take a comprehensive look at all possible hazards with an open mind. Kind of look at it, and that's what I enjoy doing too, is coming to your facilities and doing these. I mean, working through doing look at a certain job and do observation, write down any hazards, and then plugging them into this job hazard analysis system. And that's basically what it is. It's a system. So how do I conduct a JHA? Well, number one, identify the job or task to be analyzed. We need to pick, our facilities are full of different jobs. We need to pick one of them and start there. And then you want to break the job or task into key components. The easiest way to kind of explain that is step one, step two, step three, step four, to get, from step one to the end step, how does the person do the job? And then what hazards are found with each step of that specific job. So what it does is it kind of reverse engineers the system of how work gets done in a particular area in your business. So what you can do is you can kind of look at where does it start, where does it end, and break it into smaller parts, step one, step two, step three. So then you identify with step one of a specific job what hazards are found in each key component. So what hazards are associated with step one? And then what hazards are associated with step two? What hazard, on down the line, and you can fill out a nice little chart, and we'll get more into that. Identify ways to control these hazards. That's pretty much column 3 per se. And we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how it's set up. But so that for each job, there's job steps, and then for each step there's hazards, and then along with each hazard you identify ways to eliminate or control these hazards, and that's kind of like column 3. So eliminate the hazards or install controls, keep a record of the hazards identified, and steps taken to eliminate or control them. See, there's nothing nicer when a OSHA inspector, LNI inspector walks into your facility, and if you have a JSA or JHA for each work process that you have at your facility, to be honest, it will blow their mind, because they're not easy. They take some time, they take some work, but it lays it all out there for you, though. You're not playing a guessing game anymore. It reverse engineers each job into smaller manageable parts, and then you just kind of work down the line installing things or implementing things or doing different things like that to control all the hazards or eliminate. Eliminate is always the engineering fix, just if you can eliminate them. But keep a record of all this, and then periodically assess the controls to ensure they're working correctly, especially if you install new equipment, or you're putting, say, a different type of wood through your mill, or you're putting some different type of, you're just changing things up. You want to, review them to make sure that they say what they do and do what they say. So we talk about identifying the job for analysis. Okay, well, which job should we pick? Well, any job or task that meets any of the following conditions should have a JHA conducted for it. So jobs or tasks with a history of injuries or near misses. So kind of look for the low-hanging fruit. Start at the most dangerous job and kind of work on down the line. Prioritize by danger, what has the most injuries. Jobs with catastrophic potential: fire, explosion, large chemical releases, massive equipment failure. Tasks which one simple human error could lead to serious injury. Some of those more complicated type jobs should be looked at first, or prioritized first. Any job or task that meets any of the following conditions should also have a JHA conducted for it. So new people doing the task, say if you get new people and you put them on cleanup right away as their first job, you should have a JHA for the cleanup job. Tasks that have changed, and non-routine tasks, rarely performed jobs, stuff you do once a year, stuff you do every 2 years, every 5 years, should have a JHA, because it's a quick reference of how do I do this job. Because as we said, what's so awesome about this whole JSA process is it's not just for safety. It's also for production, it's for training. It's basically a blueprint on how you do work at your facility. So this job entitles this. Well, if you follow the steps on the JSA, you should pretty much be able to hand it to somebody and they can do that job. Step 1, pull lever A. Step 2, push foot pedal B. That kind of thing, step by step on how to do the job, and then how to do it safely. That's what's so awesome about this system. And then any job under a safety permit, like confined space, hot work, just because people can die. I mean, that's why it's high priority. Look at the jobs where workers have been injured or had a near miss from historical information. Look at your accident reports, your workers' compensation claims, industry or trade association data. I mean, maybe you haven't had an injury on at your place, but where's the industry seeing most of the injuries at? And then conduct a preliminary worksite walk around to observe or identify hazards, jobs, or tasks. I know a lot of us get busy throughout the day, but we need to make sure we're taking time to just observe our workers. Look at them. If they're flipping boards, well, look at how they do it. Just look at what they're doing so that you can identify better ways, quicker ways, and more efficient ways, and then of course safer ways of doing specific jobs. Watch workers doing their jobs to identify potential hazards that may lead to an injury. Pay attention to the amount of time the worker is exposed to the hazard. Reduces risk. Every way you in your facility, if you can reduce risk, then the potential for an injury is lower. Talk to workers to find out what they think is the most hazardous part of their job. Ask them if what you observe them doing is typical, or is this just a Tuesday every week, or is this a non-routine type task? So, fill out some feedback on that. Now, involving employees, people that are on the front line doing the work, that are in the line of fire, they do it every day. They know their job. They're experts. So bring them into the equation. Once you have identified jobs needing a JHA, then it's time to start conducting the JHA. Involving employees, supervisors, and the JHA process allows them to bring their insights about the job to the process. They can help identify hazards, and they will have ownership of the JHA, thereby more readily accepting the findings and hazard controls selected. So basically what this kind of goes into is the whole process. And the whole JHA process is that exactly that. It's a process, it's a system. It's not, let's have John make up a bunch of these and we'll follow them. That's the end result. But what a person wants to do is get people involved in the creation of the JHAs. Now, the actual creation of the JHAs is half the battle. You know, one of the first times I saw a JHA process involving employees, I brought tears to my eyes. I saw a group of grown men standing around a table, sitting around a table, going through the processes, the steps of doing a job and doing them safely, and identifying controls before they did a job. Now this example came from a very, very hazardous job or a non-routine job. So especially with the maintenance fellows, if they're going to do a big job or a big replacement of some big system that's very dangerous and they've never done it before, very important that everyone sit down and brainstorm kind of a process or a plan, making a plan together. And that's what this JHA is. It's a plan. So step one of the plan, we do this. Step two, okay, well, with step one, what hazards are there? You know, what tools do we need? What do we need to call some contractors? Do we, you know, all these different questions you run through your mind for each step of the process, especially if it's never been done before. It's like a installation of a new piece of equipment. So going through this JHA process will eliminate a lot of the risk that can lead to major injuries, major time loss, major malfunctioning, and breaking the equipment if it's not done right, dropping something if you don't have the right tools to carry it, and breaking, you know, expensive equipment. So that's kind of one of the biggest things about the JHA system is involving your employees, brainstorming, like have a meeting on it of the people that do the job. Hey, today we're going to build JHA for this job. We'll get everybody together, maybe involve the safety committee. You sit down, you go through step by step of the job and build it together, and then you have it in writing so that you have it to refer to. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I found beneficial to JHAs is having them available to the people. So if you haven't done something in a while, or say you're on vacation for a week and you come back and you're looking at, how did I do that again? Well, the JHA is right there. So you can look at step one, step two, step three. You can look at any hazards so you can control them. And it really works for a really good training aid, especially for newer people or people that haven't done the job in a long time. So that's what's so awesome about this process. So once a job is identified, you need to break it into key components or subtasks and list all the hazards associated with the subtask. Too much detail makes the JHA cumbersome, but too little detail may omit hazards. Now, the correct amount of detail breaks the job into components that make sense in terms of the overall job. Generally, limit the number of components to 10 or less, just kind of depends on how complicated the job is. Now here's an example of too much detail. This is an example of changing a light bulb. So in column 1 is your job steps, column 2 is the hazards, column 3 is the controls. So too much detail in this example. Get ladder from storage, get new light bulb from storage, carry ladder to light bulb to light needed changes. Place ladder under light to be changed. Ensure light switches in the off position. Climb ladder. Remove light cover. Twist the light bulb. Remove the old light bulb. Insert new light bulb. So you can kind of see how this goes. I mean, it's just every little step. I mean, that's fine, but a lot of times that gets cumbersome and then people won't use it if it's too detailed. So it needs to be slick and it needs to be practiced. That's why putting these together as a team and like a committee kind of situation is usually the best way, because you can get a lot of input. We're like, okay, we agree, everybody knows how to unscrew a light bulb. Okay, well, what are the main things? Well, getting the ladder, yeah, getting the right type of ladder, you know, getting the right tools to do the light bulb, so on and so forth. Yeah, that's important, but we don't really need every little detail. Now, too little detail, you know, get a ladder and a new light bulb, change bulb, put ladder away, throw out old light bulb. Now that's super super slick. I mean, there's no detail at all. So what's the purpose? I mean, why even use it then? It doesn't tell you anything. Now, this third example here is where it's at. So right amount of detail. Get ladder, new light bulb, turn light switch off, place ladder under light to be changed, use ladder to change bulb, or change bulb, put ladder back. I mean, it tells the basic steps of the job without being over cumbersome. Here's kind of an example form. I have all this kind of stuff. I have a folder of hundreds of stuff on HAs, example forms, all kinds of stuff. So please, if you guys need any help with this, let me know. I'll shoot them over to you or bring them to you next time I visit you. So here's just a simple example. Job hazard analysis form. You have the date of the analysis, who participated in putting it together. So job or task where injuries occurred or can occur. So how people get hurt, what causes them to get hurt, and what safe practices or PPE are needed. And that's basically, kind of what you talk about. So it kind of just goes through, with the ladders. What's this example? But, you're breaking it down into smaller parts. So we're going to get into that through a real good example here in a little bit. I just kind of want to lay the groundwork for you, and then we'll do a JHA together. Once you've identified jobs or tasks that have the potential or are in fact injuring workers, you need to rank these tasks and start addressing the most serious first. One method of ranking tasks considers the probability that the hazard will cause an injury and an estimate of severity of that injury. Now I have some forms, example forms to do JHAs that do all this. It rates everything from most hazardous to least hazardous, and then you can even get numbers, you can quantify all this kind of stuff. Those are more of a complicated form, take a lot more time, or you can go to more of the basic form. I like the basic form at least for all your jobs, and then if there's a few super technical ones, maybe do a more complex type of form to do this system. So as you kind of can go through the more complicated process of a JHA or JSA, consider the severity of the injury that something may go wrong while doing the task. And there's some tables associated on these fancy forms that are for more complicated. They have ways to break down and give scoring to all the different severity or probability. So like, yeah, you could get hurt, but is it just a little scrape or is it catastrophic? Can it kill you? I mean, looking at that. So you can assign numbers and quantify, and that really helps, especially in the money arena, identify, well, what's our most dangerous job? What's our most, severe injuries, and what's the probability that it'll happen? I mean, so you can, because time is money, where do you want to devote your time? Where do you want to devote resources in all of this? Well, this will help you identify that by going through the numbers and kind of ranking them if you're into quantifying. I mean, most of us kind of know where the most dangerous ones are, but if there's a few that are neck and neck, you can always break it down by the numbers and really see, which is the most dangerous and where should we start first with the whole process. So eliminating or controlling hazards. So after you've identified the jobs and evaluated subtasks and hazards, you'll need to identify ways to eliminate or control the hazards. So that's column number 3. So column number 1 basically is the tasks, column 2 is the hazards, and column 3 is controls. Now the best method is to eliminate the hazard at the source. Now that's your engineering controls. If any of you ever heard me talk about this, that's ACE number 1. If the hazard does not exist, the risk is 0. There's no way that you can get hurt if you eliminate the hazard, right? So that's always priority number 1. Now, if elimination is not possible, you can control the hazard at source through engineering controls or limit worker exposure using administrative controls. That's like training. Doing a JSA is administrative control. If those two methods are not enough to remove or reduce the worker's exposure to acceptable levels, then personal protective equipment must be used. So that's your very last line of defense is, wearing safety glasses or wearing earplugs. If you can't get rid of the noise, then you're left with that. But that's what your priority is, to get rid of the noise so you don't have to wear earplugs. Now, personal protective equipment can also be used temporarily while engineering controls are installed. So, I mean, you always want to be moving toward the engineering controls and you can supplement with the PPE if you have to. So, eliminate or controlling hazards. We're going to go through a few examples to kind of get the balls and the gears rolling and turning. Once hazards are identified, eliminate or control them. So most effective to least effective. So at the source, eliminate, substitute, and close the source. So like if you have a chemical that you use is super carcinogenic, well, can we substitute something else? I mean, there's a lot of, it's a business's best interest is to give you safe products that do the same job as the harmful products. So if you've been using a product for 20 years, there's might be a new one on the shelf that will do the same thing, or if even better, but with less hazard. So substitution is a good method. Next down the path is exhaust or ventilation, because the solution to pollution is dilution. So diluting something is through ventilation. I know I've seen this at some of the facilities with a lot of painting and stuff like that. You can put in ventilation so that the exposure to the employees is below any kind of harmful levels. So you don't have to wear or have a respiratory protection program. You don't have to wear respirators. And then machine guarding, so you can't get your fingers in that. That's another method. Then at the worker, then of course you have the PPE and training. So engineering controls are designed changes or physical devices that control a worker's exposure to a hazard. So we've seen chains, right? Well, you get your fingers in there, you lose your fingers. So we need to guard those. And we can guard them either right at the sprocket and chain, or we can guard the area. So that's always good to know. Noise is another big one that we always want to strive for engineering controls. A lot has to do, say, with air intake. Air is always loud, and we'll get into an example later on that. But can we put our air intakes on the ceiling, or can put loud compressors in the basement? Looking at that, so we don't want our workers right next to loud equipment if we can help it. And if what we want to do is, if we can't guard or eliminate the noise, well, if the worker is just pushing buttons, can we put the worker in a room like this picture here shows, a control room that's maybe double sheetrocked so it keeps the noise out, and they can run their processes from a controlled environment. And they don't have to wear earplugs, because if you wear earplugs, then there's chance of insertion loss if people don't wear the earplugs correctly. So this will eliminate all of the problems that develop with earplugs. So it's just kind of looking at what are all the different facets of engineering controls. We talk about lockout electrical equipment or moving parts of machinery eliminates hazards during maintenance. So lockout tagout is another form of a control of a hazard that would go into that third column of the JSA. Administrative controls act on the worker, not the hazard, like training, talking about JSAs to them, or talking about wearing earplugs correctly. Explaining this stuff to them is an administrative control. Not as effective as getting rid of the noise like an engineering control, but if people understand why they should wear earplugs, then they'll be more apt to wear them. Now, examples include limiting the worker's time exposure to a hazard, or so job rotation, that works good for ergonomics and noise. Limiting the number of workers exposed, or limiting exposure through specific work practices. So kind of that's why it's important to step back and look at what you're doing so that you can maybe come up with a better plan. Like here's an example here, using a lifting platform. So you don't have to bend over as far, keep things in a neutral posture, and then you will not have the ergonomic problems. Now the last line of defense is personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment should be considered only after other control methods have been tried or shown not to be feasible. It requires the employee to understand the nature of the hazard and the limitations of the PPE. It also requires constant management to ensure the PPE is appropriate for the hazard, employees are properly trained to use the PPE correctly, and a supply of replacements is readily available. Now the thing with PPE is it wears out. Your filters get plugged, your gloves get holes in them, your boots wear out, your hard hats get old and oxidize, and the plastic gets brittle over time. Your lanyards get broken or worn out or dirty or damaged or cut. So, I mean, that's why they're always the last line of defense, because they can be compromised very readily and very easily. Now, in my past, one of the ways, I know some of us don't have a lot of time, so how do you manage PPE? I want to throw this little tidbit in there. Um, there's companies out there, one of them starts with a G, and their commercial always talks about getting it done or something like that. Well, they actually have these vending machines that you can fill up with PPE, and you can put your employee numbers, give them a PIN number, and you can manage PPE that way, so you don't spend half your day ordering new PPE all the time. They'll come and stock the vending machine for you. So you can put earplugs, you can put even boots if you have to, you can put respirators, gloves, um, safety glasses, work gloves, different things like that, all in this vending machine. And then people can check it out, or get it, and they just put their number in, and it kind of controls the cost of PPE, but it also makes sure that it's always readily and available. And that's the number one thing. A lot of times, oh, you're just putting this in here to control me. Well, no, it's so you always have your PPE, because people get busy, things don't get ordered or whatnot, and you're out of PPE. So these vending machines are really awesome. Usually the cost is just cost what it takes to fill it. So usually they'll let you use the vending machine for free, because they're making money off you selling stuff through it, or using stuff through the vending machine. So if you have any questions about the vending machine stuff, please shoot me an email. They're pretty great, especially if we don't have a lot of time to always mess around with ordering PPE. Combination of controls. In some cases, combination controls may be necessary to fully protect workers, so you need ventilation and respirators. Worker wearing respirator and coveralls in a ventilated spray booth, so you can eliminate contact hazards as well. Stuff getting on your skin. Once you go through this whole system of JHAs, it gets a lot simpler, but one of the most important things, like anything, after you've done something, you need to review it and keep it maintained. So you need to maintain your JHAs. Periodically review your job hazard analysis, ensures that it remains current and continues to help reduce workplace accidents and injuries. Even if the job has not changed, it is possible that during the review process you will identify hazards that were not identified in the initial analysis. That's why after you get through with it, go through it again, maybe have a second meeting to review it, just to make sure that people maybe thought about it and, oh wait, we should add this other step, or we should add this other control. And so you can document all that. Anytime you revise a JHA, it is important to train all employees affected by the change in this job methods, or in job methods, procedures, and protective measures that are adopted. So anytime you make changes, make sure people know about the changes so they can actively participate in the better way to do things. Additional references, if you want to dig into more of these things, like I said, JHA is one of my favorite topics in safety, because I've seen what it can do. If you put together a JHA before you do a complicated work process, the chances of a problem are eliminated, in my opinion, because you've thought about what you need to get the job done and to get it done efficiently, cheaply, and safely. So I have tons of resources. If you want to implement JHAs in your facility, please contact me. All right. So let's review. A job safety analysis is a method that can be used to identify and analyze and record. Number one, the steps involved in performing a specific job, the existing or potential safety and health hazards associated with each step, and the recommended action procedures that will eliminate or reduce these hazards in the workplace. Okay, this is an example. I'll admit to you guys, I don't work in a sawmill every day, so these might be a little bit rough, but I just want to make sure that I want to give you a good specific example so that you can kind of fly with this system and reduce the injuries and accidents. So anyways, here's an example of a JHA, and I have these forms. I can surely get you one. I have a real nice one to give you. I could maybe post it here. But anyways, okay, JSA example. Sawmill, Sawdust, Blowdown example. Now, when I go out to the sawmills and talk to different people, they don't do blowdowns, but they do blowdowns, if you know what I mean. So this is just an example. So top of the JSA right there, it's how to you want to document everything. So the job title here is Sawdust Blowdown. You put an arbitrary number, what date that it started. You put like when it was when it was first created, and then when it was revised, and title of the person who does the job, cleanup, supervisor. I just put my name there, so you know who's in charge kind of that area. Analysis performed by, I put safety committee, or area workers, or other, is a team. You want to do these by a team if you can do it, because you want people to buy into them, and you want people to, if you just hand them a piece of paper saying, oh, just follow this, they'll just probably smile and not follow it. So if they have some skin in the game, well, they're going to be able to participate in this more readily. That's why building them is just as important as following them in a team effort to improve safety awareness. So, okay, here we go. We got organization. I just put a generic name there. Location, department. I put planer. Reviewed by whoever reviews them, and put their name on there. Okay, so then it's broken into 3 columns. You have a sequence of basic job steps is column 1. Column 2 is potential hazards. And then column 3 is recommended action or procedure. That's your controls for how do you get rid of the hazard. So most JSAs always start with this one here. Obtain JSA or create a new one to review plan. So injury damage is a result of incorrect information, and obtain correct JHA training in JHA system. So basically that's just kind of a reminder to people about the whole system. And usually one of the first ones, especially if you're equipment or stuff like that, you always want to put, just to remind people, the first step to review manufacturers' users manuals, review training, all that kind of stuff. Just as a reminder, we always want to put those kind of as the first 1 or 2 of the job steps, kind of the default ones for any JHA we're putting together. Now, number 1, step 1, you can number them if you want, but the next one would be identify work area and prepare area for task. In this case, the task is blowdown. We want to look for, in the type of hazards there are trips, slips, falls, impalements, electrocution, eliminating ignition sources. So your hazard would be, say, ignition sources. The controls of that, we want to practice good housekeeping. I'm going to clear any debris, eliminate trip hazards, and then identify ignition sources. I want to review task assignments. So because injury from work responsibility confusion, if people don't know what they're supposed to be doing, there can be confusion, which can result in injuries. So the way to prevent that is review and clarify individual work responsibilities. And if you've already created a JHA or JSA for them, have them review the JSA. That reminds you to keep going. Now, the next step, become familiar with equipment and tools. Equipment operation injuries. So review instruction manual for equipment, or if you've never used air wand or any of that stuff, make sure you ask about it. Do some training on it, on how to use the tools. So before you can do a job, you need to know how the tools work, and that's what this does. It reminds you that. And then the last one on this page, inspect equipment, tools, air hoses, air nozzles. Severe injury or death because of equipment failure. So we always want to, inspect our equipment before we use it. Identify if there's any damaged equipment, like holes in any of the air hoses. Nozzles may be cracked or damaged, which can result in big problems. So review. The control for that one is remove any component from service that is damaged and repair it or destroy it. Continuing on with the next hazard, we have communicate, next job step would be communicate start of blowdown. So other workers walk into a cloud or come into the blowdown area, they can be injured. So we always want to communicate
the start of the blowdown so everyone knows what's going on. How do we control that? We use radios or to and post maybe a schedule when you're going to do blowdown so people are very aware of when it's going on. And then finally, right, finally we get to the job itself, the actual work that we're going to do. And that's blowing down the area, the actual blowdown. Okay, well, what hazards are involved with blowing down? Well, deflagration, a fireball. We blowing all that dust up in the air, and if it's at a high enough concentration and the particle size is small enough and the dust is dry enough, below 25%, we can have ourselves a deflagration, which is a fancy word for fireball, throughout our sawmill. Well, how do we control that hazard? Well, if we knock out the legs from the table, number one, by starting with ignition sources. You can't have a fireball if there's no ignition source. So we want to go around and make sure that we don't have any bad wiring, any welding, any hot bearings. Using maybe a temperature gun to look at stuff that finds some hot sources over 400 degrees. The next hazard for blowing down is flying debris. You don't get the flying dust in your eyeballs, right? So the way we control that is through PPE, goggles, safety glasses, face shields. That's more the last line of defense, but flying debris, most of the time that's what we do. Safety glasses really aren't very good for this because when you're blowing stuff around, stuff can get back behind your safety glasses. So the best PPE is goggles and a face shield to protect your face as well from flying particles hitting you in the face. So goggles and face shield is the way to go for blowdown. It's the best practice with that. Now, combustible dust explosions are possible. How do we stop explosion? Well, we kick the legs from the table again. We eliminate confinement. So how do we do that? We open up the building to eliminate confinement of energy. So if we do have a deflagration or fireball, if the building is opened up, there's a place for the energy to go and you won't blow the roof off the building. So that's very important to open up your building when you do blowdowns. So the energy has to go somewhere if the worst case happens. And then other things possible, trips and falls because of, stairs and different, just getting around the area. Maybe if it's that cloudy, you can't see very good, and things get slippery, whatnot. So that you always have the trip and fall hazards. And how do we control that? Well, with boots, we watch for tripping hazards that cannot be removed, like your stairs and stuff. You're doing one job, but you're also walking around, so you need to make sure where your footing is as you go around. Pay attention to your surroundings with that one. Noise, anytime you blow stuff around, that nozzle is usually super loud. So you want to make sure you wear your earplugs and wear them correctly. Make sure they're in deep enough past your tragus. That's very important. There's also some tips out there also that not only will they be legal as far as the 30 PSI coming out the end of your wand, but also they're quiet too, because there's nothing like an open-ended pipe for loudness, right? So there's a lot of different technological advances out there. And then falling debris, say if you're blowing down stuff off rafters, ceilings, stuff like that, stuff may fall down. So make sure you're wearing your hard hat. And then also the wand sometimes is rough on a guy's hands or a girl's hands. You need to wear some gloves. So that's kind of a basic rundown of a specific JSA example on sawdust blowdown. So right there, sequence, in the left column you have the steps. The middle column you have the hazard with each step. And then in the third column, the right column, you put all of the controls. So then if you're new to the job, you can just look at this. Okay, step 1, I do this. Step 2, step 3, step 4. That's how I do the job. Well, what do I got to watch out for? These are the hazards. I got to watch out for this stuff. Well, how do I protect myself? Right here. So it gives you a nice tool for training new people, or if you haven't done a job in a long time, the job steps of doing it, and then how to do it safely. So when you're looking at hazards, we talk about hazards. Well, we need to expand our knowledge of hazards. Well, this
little list here. So we want to watch for impact with falling or flying objects, penetration of sharp objects, caught in or between stationary and moving objects, falls from an elevated or work platform, ladders or stairs, excessive lifting, twisting, pushing, pulling, reaching, or bending. That's like your ergonomic hazards. Exposure to vibrating tools, excessive noise, cold or heat, or harmful levels of gases, vapors, liquids, fumes, or dust. These are just all the different type of hazards we try to think about when we're creating our JSAs, our JHA, whatever you feel like calling them. Repetitive motion, electrical hazards, lighting. If you talk about radiation, welding, that's why we want to put the welding curtains to protect radiation from hitting people. And water, not only just for drowning we think of, but mold, stuff like that. So these are different hazards to look at when we're building our JSAs. And then there's some things to think about when we're conducting the analysis. Select jobs with the highest risk for the workplace injury or illness. Then select an experienced employee who is willing to be observed, and involve the employee and his or her immediate supervisor in the process. It takes a group effort to do some of this stuff so that we don't forget things. Everybody brings something to the table. Well, let's use everybody's knowledge, stand on each other's shoulders to kind of help develop the best comprehensive JSA, make sure that they're very effective. We don't want them, like the other example, being cumbersome, but we want to hit it right on the head. So it works, because it's good to work as a team. Identify the record and record each step necessary to accomplish the task. Use an action verb like pick up, turn on to describe each step. Identify all actual or potential safety and health hazards associated with each task, and then determine and record the recommended actions, procedures, or forming each step that will eliminate or reduce the hazard. So you have engineering controls, administrative controls, and then PPE. Well, that concludes our JSA, JHA webinar. Just want to thank you for joining me. But I just want to share with you, these are my two lovely children, and this is why we care about safety. We want to go home to these people, our family, every day. And the JSA process, JHA process, is one of the greatest tools that we have to reduce injuries, to control hazards, and to get us all home to our little kids or whoever we go home to, our dog sometimes. So anyways, once again, my name is John Zeman, Safety Specialist with Timber Products Manufacturers Association. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please contact me or email me or all of that, and I'll gladly help you with the JSA process. I have lots of forums and materials associated with JSAs, and I'd love to share them with you. So with that, I bid you farewell and have yourself a very wonderful day.